corporation, capitalizing at $1.4 billion. Embarrassed that his company was bought over and that J.P. Morgan was making more money than he could have ever made, Andrew Carnegie spent the rest of his money by donating it to charities and building libraries. In 1859, a man named Drake first used oil to fuel his light lamp, and by the 1970s, oil was used to light lamps all over the nation. However, by 1885, 250,000 of Edison's electric light bulbs were in use, and the electric industry soon rendered oil obsolete. Oil, however, was just beginning to be developed into uses for gasoline-burning internal combustion engines. John D. Rockefeller organized the Standard Oil Company of Ohio in 1882. Once he saw how much the nation depended on the oil industry, Rockefeller crushed weaker competitors because his company was able to produce superior oil and at a cheaper price.
Many plutocrats, or people whose power derives from their wealth, felt that it was indeed divine powers that helped them achieve their wealth. Godliness is in league with our riches, preached the extremely wealthy John D. Rockefeller. The Lord gave me my money. Others, who favored the view of wide-open capitalism, held another theory close to heart, the survival of the fittest theory of English philosopher Herbert Spencer and Yale professor William Graham Sumner. Later, this theory was mislabeled social Darwinism after the naturalist Charles Darwin, who stressed adaptation, while Spencer and Graham stressed rigidity of natural law. It was them who dubbed the term survival of the fittest. Many felt that poor people were poor because of their own actions. Reverend Russell Conwell, who lectured, "There is not a poor person in the United States who is not made poor by his own shortcomings." The plutocrats took its stand firmly on the Constitution and sought refuge behind the 14th Amendment, which they interpreted as an amendment not only to protect people's rights, but also the rights of businesses. Eventually, the masses of the people in America began to mobilize against the monopolies. First, they tried to control the trust through state legislation, but failed, and were forced to go to Congress with. After a while, the Sherman Antitrust Act of 1890 was passed into law. The act forbade combinations in restraint of trade without any distinction between good trust and bad trust. The act had many loopholes, so it proved largely ineffective, and contrary to its original intent, it was used to curb labor unions or labor combinations that were deemed to be restraining trade. Despite industrial advances, the South remained mainly agrarian. Although James Buchanan Duke developed a huge cigarette industry in the form of American Tobacco Company and made many donations to what eventually became Duke University. Many men, like Henry W. Grady, who was an editor of the Atlanta Constitution, tried to urge the South to industrialize. Many northern companies set rates to keep the South from gaining any competitive edge whatsoever, with examples including the rich deposits of iron and coal near Birmingham, Alabama, and textile mills of the South. As the Industrial Revolution spread into America, the standard of living rose. Immigrants rushed into the U.S. and early Jeffersonian ideas about agricultural dominance fell. More and more people went from being farmers to being wage workers, but there was always a fear of unemployment. Strong pressure in foreign trade developed as the tireless industrial machine threatened to flood the domestic market. The inflow of immigrants provided a labor force who would work in bad conditions for little money, made it impossible for people who wanted conditions in factories to be improved, because a boss could simply hire the unemployed to take their work. If workers tried to go on strike to get conditions improved, there was many weapons to stop them, including hiring strikebreakers, asking courts to stop them, or even bringing in troops. High-class civilians like Carnegie and Rockefeller felt that they battled and worked hard to get to the top. Workers could do the same if they really wanted to get to the top also.
With the growing cost of living, combined with suppression and meager wages by corporations, labor unions began to necessitate. By 1872, there were several hundred thousand organized workers in 32 national unions. For example, the National Labor Union, organized in 1866, was composed of 600,000 skilled and unskilled workers, and fought for an 8-hour workday, which was successful for only government workers. In addition, the Knights of Labor, founded by Terence V. Powderly, was also composed of about 750 skilled and unskilled workers, who campaigned for economic and social reform, in the forms of safety and health codes, and an 8-hour workday. Both the National Labor Union and the Knights of Labor used strikes and immense followers as their chief weapons. The new industrial labor was the gears which operated the new age of big business, where corporations prospered, but individual wage workers were cut short of the same benefits that their employers received. The employed worked in a corporation, now with no time for any personal relations, where workers were stripped of their originality, creativity, and personalities. During the 1880s and 1890s, several hundred thousand workers fled the United States from Europe to seek unskilled jobs. And, with the rise of railroad systems, corporations could receive an abundant amount of workers from anywhere in the country. Therefore, with the staggering competition for jobs, especially after those that were displaced from new machines, businesses and new workers would accept even the most meager wages. With such large treasuries under their disposal, corporations became dominant by suppressing strikes, punishing labor union organizers, buying local press, expensive lawyers, and pressuring politicians. Furthermore, corporations used federal courts to cease strikes, bring in federal troops, use a lockout to starve workers, or have them sign agreements not to strike, called an ironclad oath. Also, on occasion, the corporation owned the company town, with high-priced goods and lenient credit, allowing for debt to build, essentially enslaving the workers to the business. The dream created by the new world of big business was symbolized by Andrew Carnegie and John D. Rockefeller, who battled their way to the top of the social hierarchy. The prime leader of the American Federation of Labor was London-born Samuel Gompers, who rose in social ranks to become president of the Federation all but one time from 1886 to 1924. The Federation was comprised of several self-governing and independent national unions. Gompers sought pure and simple unionism, meaning better wages, hours, and working conditions. An important goal of his was the trade agreement authorizing the closed ship, or all-union labor. The American Federation of Labor was unconcerned by unskilled workers, blacks, and women, and remained minimally political. By 1900, the Federation had roughly 7 million workers, and won or compromised about half of the 23,000 strikes. Eventually, some industries saw the threat posed by the labor unions, and chose to sign agreements and bargain with them rather than fighting them. Labor Day was made an official holiday by Congress in 1894 in honor of the workers. Although the progress made by labor unions, it would be several more decades before labor would gain equality with capital. Although their initial success, the Knights of Labor began to ride towards a fall, where half of their May Day strikes failed in 1886. Anarchists advocated an overthrow of the American government, in the Haymarket Square episode of May 4, 1886 in Chicago, where dynamite went off during a protest, killing dozens of citizens and police. 5 culprits were sentenced to death, one of whom committed suicide, and another 3 were given lengthy prison terms. Later, in 1892, the governor of Illinois, John P. Altgeld, pardoned the 3 survivors. Another fault of the Knights of Labor was that their unskilled workers' strikes could easily be broken by strikebreakers, called scabs. The Federation exclusively allowed skilled worker membership, creating the American Federation of Labor.